Guys, good evening. My name's Jeff. I'm the chef and co-owner here at Benchmark Restaurant in Levis Commons. And today we're going to be making beef Wellington. Beef Wellington is a classic English dish that's really made for celebrations and is going to wow everybody at your holiday get-togethers. So this is a great holiday dish because it's something that you're definitely not going to cook on any random weekday when you're picking the kids up and running them all around to school practice and things like that. But when you got that extra time to really spend some time in the kitchen and do something that your family is going to remember, this is a great go-to item for it. Buy the best quality ingredients that you can get your hands on and you treat them with love and care. So if you'll notice on the top of this, you got that nice, consistent golden brown crust across the top. That's really going to make all the difference later on. After we wrap it all and it's covered in everything, you're still going to have that seared, just a little bit salty texture that people love out of a good piece of beef. You know, we keep it pretty simple here at Benchmark, you know, and we stick with salt and pepper. We let the meat speak for itself. So we want to go ahead and do that on all sides. So really, seals in all the moisture in the steak in there, but then it also gives you that crust that everybody's looking for on a great piece of beef. So me personally, with tenderloin being as lean as it is, I really like to cook tenderloin rare. Now that being said, it comes out great medium rare or medium as well. But for my own personal taste, I love a filet or tenderloin that's cooked really rare. It doesn't have that meat content like a ribeye that you have to break down. It really is something that you can just cut with a spoon and not worry too much about the undercooking it. All right, great. Now that we have the crust all over our steak, we're gonna bring it back over to the cutting board. And what we're gonna do is, while the beef is still hot, we're gonna take a little bit of English mustard, Dijon, and we're just gonna rub it down. So we wanna do that while it's hot so that the mustard itself basically melts into the meat and isn't something that's just on top. The meat really has the ability to take on that flavor. So the next step for our beef Wellington, you know, we have our seared off beef. We have something that's called mushroom Duxelle. So that's a really fancy name for a little bit of mushrooms that are just pureed down with just a touch of brandy and a little bit of cream. So we cook out the moisture in all the mushrooms and then we get left with this beautiful paste. So that's gonna be the first layer to our beef Wellington. That's one of the tricks to this, is having layers and having everything be cooled down so that you can make a consistent layer around the beef. If everything was hot, it really wouldn't wrap around there as well. Bring it up from the edges, and then we're going to wrap it. And then just tighten everything down. So now we're gonna throw this in the cooler for just a second and then pop it back out in about 15-20 minutes when everything's cooled down, and then we're gonna go on to our next steps of the wrapping process. So we pulled our beef out of the cooler, everything's nice and chilled down now. So now we're gonna start with the next layer. That's gonna be our Italian prosciutto. So prosciutto is just ham that's been cured and aged for anywhere between 18 and 36 months. Really delicate, really light flavor. But what we're gonna be using it for here mostly is a layer or a barrier between all the moisture that's gonna be inside of our beef Wellington and the puff pastry on the outside. You know, that's one of the important things about a great beef Wellington, is having that crispy, flaky puff pastry crust on the outside. And we're gonna move it back into the cooler and let everything cool down so that it stays together just a little bit better and forms a tighter crust on there. All right, so we got our next layer of the beef Wellington going. So this is gonna be our puff pastry. Puff pastry is a classic French pastry that is really heavy on the butter, really decadent, really something that is gonna set that lean beef off. You know, give you that buttery, flaky crust on the outside that everybody's always looking for. So we'll flip it over and then just tuck that crust right underneath there. Nobody's gonna complain about a little extra buttery puff pastry dough on there. So here in the restaurant, we have a couple cool, fun tricks that we always do. You know, they always say that you eat with your eyes first. So what we have here is our lattice cutter. So this is gonna be something that just adds a little bit of visual appeal to our beef Wellington. So we're gonna cut it and then stretch it out. And if you can see, it forms that lattice pattern that's really just gonna be beautiful on the outside of our beef. Now, being delicate, we're gonna just tease that apart a little bit and go right on top. And like I said, you know, those rough edges, we're just gonna cup and tuck underneath the beef. form it up with your hands into a nice tight ball. And then we're gonna take our egg wash. So egg wash is really gonna activate that nice golden brown crust that everybody's looking for on their pies and on their pastries. You know, just because there's a big old chunk of beef rather than apple pie in the middle of it doesn't mean that we don't want it to be golden brown and delicious. Then our last step, we're just gonna coat it with just a little bit of flaky Fleur de Sel or French sea salt. The bigger the crystals, the better for something like this. I personally really like to bite into a nice chunk of crystal. All right, we're gonna go right onto our sizzle plate here, and we're gonna send her in the oven. We're gonna be in the oven for about 30 minutes until we reach a temperature of about 115 degrees. We're gonna be shooting to pull it out and cut it when it's about 120, so we'll give it a chance to rest up for about 15 minutes, and then it should be perfect.